Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. I'm Chaim ben Pesach, and we have with us again the great David ben Moshe. On this program, we're going to be discussing how Donald Trump has already started to go against Israel. He's pressured Israel to agree to a so-called ceasefire agreement, which isn't really ceasefire, which is really a surrender agreement in Gaza. And he's proving that he's not a friend of Israel at all. Never was, never will be. He might have been a lesser of evils against Joe Biden, but he's no friend of Israel either. We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss the implications for America, because America is going to be in a lot of trouble if Trump goes against Israel. God will punish America. They'll be in a lot of trouble, the United States, if this new president also goes against Israel. But before we begin all of that, and of course, David ben Moshe always has important things to discuss, but before we begin all that on this very important program, this program is dedicated to a refuah shlema, complete recovery, for Shlomo ben Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Ruven ben Shoshana, and Ruth bat Sarah, and to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls, for Bernice Gutfeld, Sharon Mitman, Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Neinkin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Ze'eb ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Ruven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Harav Mir Kahana, Harav Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi bat Liba, Yosef ben Meir, Robert Mitman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, Charles Zolat, and Yair Levine. Well, we are today on the verge of an agreement being signed between Israel and the Muslim Nazi terrorist mass murdering organization Hamas. It's just unbelievable. Negotiations with Muslim Nazi butchers, beasts who cut the heads off of little babies, who burn little babies in front of their mothers, who rape women and parade naked women through the streets of Gaza while raping them and sexually attacking them and molesting them in the streets in front of mobs of thousands of people. These barbaric Nazi beasts who are the cruelest, most savage, vicious degenerates on the face of the earth, and Israel conducts so-called negotiations with them. And Trump is the one who's responsible for this. Trump and Netanyahu, the two of them. Trump wanted an agreement because he wants the art of the deal. He wants to show what a deal maker he is. He couldn't care less about Israel. He doesn't care about America either, by the way. He is not an American patriot. He couldn't care less about America. He cares only about Donald Trump. Always was like that, always will be like that. Okay? Anyway, Donald Trump said he wanted an agreement before he takes office. He said he's going to make sure. He says otherwise they'll have hell to pay, and he wants to show that he can get things done. He also promised there was going to be an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia. He was going to negotiate an end to the war before he takes office. Let's see if that happens. He has a few days left as of the time we're doing this program. I mean, he makes all of these pronouncements that are so ridiculous and clownish. In any event, Trump decided that he's going to go against Israel now and force Israel to surrender. Israel gets only 33 so far. I mean, the final details, we haven't seen the final details. You'll get more information on next week's program. But Israel will get 33 of its hostages back. In other words, Israel doesn't even get all of her hostages back. Dozens of her hostages remain in the hands of these Hamas beasts, these Hamas monsters, where they're tortured and raped and mutilated underground in underground facilities. And Israel doesn't even get them all back. But huge numbers, we don't know the exact number yet, but huge numbers of Muslim terrorist mass murderers are going to be released from Israeli prisons. Of course, they should never be there to begin with. They all should have been executed immediately. And Israel releases huge numbers of Muslim terrorists, and Israel withdraws after all this fighting, and after over 900 Jewish soldiers were slaughtered. And after 15 months of fighting in what has become the Vietnam for Israel, in Gaza, Israel withdraws from all of her strategic positions and pulls back and lets the Hamas terrorists basically take over again. That's basically what's happening. By the way, Israel has sent 100,000 tons of humanitarian aid, so-called humanitarian aid, to the Gaza Nazi monsters. 100,000 tons. That's enough to feed more than 10 times the population there. And the whole world accuses Israel of genocide. Trump is not a friend of Israel, never was, never will be. And if you think that America is going to get away with pressuring Israel to make these suicidal concessions without being punished by God, you don't believe in the Bible if you think that, because the Bible clearly says, I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. Nations that go against Israel are cursed. And Trump did not learn from his first term in office. He was brought down. The reason he was defeated for re-election in 2020, and he did lose. The reason he was defeated for re-election is because he went against Israel. He came up with a so-called Middle East peace plan that would create a Palestinian terrorist state that would have been suicide for Israel. Days after he came out with this plan, the coronavirus struck the United States with a vengeance. Before that, there were almost no cases of coronavirus in the United States. And the economy in the United States was in such a strong position. Trump was on the verge of being reelected. The polls showed he was very strong. He was going to defeat all the Democrats. He was on the verge of being reelected. He was brought down. Days after he came out with this Middle East plan to hurt Israel, all of a sudden, boom, the coronavirus hits America. Now, what would have happened if he hadn't come up with this plan, if he had been pro-Israel? God has ways of doing what God wants to do. He would have been reelected if he had been pro-Israel. There's no question about that. Now, Trump didn't learn from that because he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't read the Bible. He doesn't care about any of that. Okay? He thinks that evangelical Christians and religious people are suckers and losers. He does think that, by the way. That's why we wanted you to support someone like Ted Cruz in 2016, who's an evangelical Christian who really believes in Israel, who understands that America's destiny is tied to Israel. Or Ron DeSantis, who's not an evangelical Christian. Ron DeSantis is a Catholic. Despite the fact that he's a Catholic, he is genuinely pro-Israel. He went to Israel. He felt he had a spiritual experience there, he and his wife. And he loved Israel, and he's very pro-Israel, Ron DeSantis. Or someone like Mike Huckabee, who is also very pro-Israel. I mean, there are people in American politics who are genuinely supportive of Israel and understand the reason why we have to support Israel. It goes beyond the geopolitical strategic considerations that all of these pointy-headed professors come up with. It goes way beyond all of that. God commands all nations to support Israel and warns them, if you don't, what will happen. And by the way, supporting Israel doesn't mean giving them weapons. Israel should not get American weapons. Israel should not get American so-called foreign aid. Israel should become independent and can become independent. And that's what the president
said. Israel should not stop fighting until every last member of Hamas is killed. So there's a friend of Israel.
You're talking about Hegseth?
Yeah.
Yes. Hegseth he is a friend of Israel. He's good. Now, but Trump does not think like that at all. Not at all. Remember, they asked Trump what his favorite verse in the Bible was. He never read the Bible. He wouldn't read the Bible because he's not in it. If he's not in the Bible, it's not worth reading. Only a book that talks about Donald Trump is worth reading. Now, we supported Trump over Biden because Biden was worse, and the Democrats are worse. And I hope that in other areas involving Israel that Trump is going to do good things, or at least be more reasonable. I hope. I hope he's not going to, Donald Trump told during the election, and you're going to see a real test now of what we're talking about here, of Trump's phoniness. Because during the election, Trump told Netanyahu to attack Iran's nuclear bomb-making program. He urged Netanyahu to do it. He said you'd have to be crazy not to do it. He urged Israel to strike the oil fields, nuclear program, give it to Iran. He urged them during the campaign. Why did he urge this? Because he knew that that would send gas prices and oil prices skyrocketing temporarily. It would only be temporary, but temporarily prices would have gone up right before the election. That would have helped him politically. That's why he urged it. Let's see if he's going to support an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear bomb-making program now that he's ready to take office. And by the way, if there is a spike in oil prices, it'll be temporary. And it'll benefit the United States, because if you knock out the reason the prices of oil would go up is because you'd be taking Iran's oil shipments off the world market. If you destroyed Iran's oil industry, which the Israeli Air Force can easily do, if you do that, you're taking Iran's oil sales off the world market. That will temporarily cause a spike in prices, but only be temporary, because America can replace that. And America can earn the money that the Iranian regime is earning now. Let's hope that Trump does that. Let's hope that Trump wants that to happen. Because we could put Saudi Arabia out of business. If you had a true, aggressive energy independence and energy export program where you really went all out to use all of America's great resources, you'd put all the Muslim terrorist countries out of business, because that's the only thing they have is oil. They produce nothing, they create nothing, except for terrorism and mass murder. They produce and create nothing. The only thing they happen to have oil, and even that they don't know how to do. The infidels have to do it for them. They don't know how to do it. They can't pump a single barrel of oil. They have no idea how it works even. They don't even know. They're making trillions of dollars. They don't even know how this money's coming into their possession.
You imagine if they didn't have the oil, how destitute every Arab nation would be.
It would be like we had this before the oil. Before oil became such an expensive commodity, the Arab countries were living in destitution. Egypt today lives in destitution now with the oil from Sinai that the stupid Israelis gave them. That disgusting leader Menachem Begin and the disgusting Likud party handed the whole Sinai with all their oil fields over to Egypt. Egypt makes billions and billions from the oil, but it's not enough. Egypt is a bottomless pit. They can't do anything with their economy. They're dumber than camels. They can't do anything. And the infidel, and then blaming America, the great Satan, and Israel, the little Satan, and blaming everybody for their problems. It reminds me of certain people in the United States who blame certain people. I'm not going to say who. I don't say who. I'm very politically correct, but they blame everybody for their problems except themselves. As our great leader, Morenu v'Rabbeinu Harab Meir Kahana, Zecher Tzaddik v'Kadosh Livracha, Hashem Yikom Damo, this great leader, may God avenge his blood. As our great leader Harav Kahana always said, they are the eternal malcontents. No matter what you do for them, they're never happy. The Saudis got trillions of dollars in oil money for doing nothing, for sitting around swatting flies in their air-conditioned tents. And they got trillions of dollars in oil money. Now they have gigantic buildings and edifices and building all types of projects and things, just huge amounts of money all over the place now. And they're still complaining. The infidels, they're against us, Islamophobia. Never stop complaining and never stop preaching Islamic jihad and financing it. Let's understand something here, okay? For the idiots who say, well, are you loyal to America or to Israel? You can't be loyal to America if you're not loyal to Israel. Because God controls what happens to America, to Israel, to all countries. And God says you must support Israel. God is speaking here. Open up your Bible and read it. Now, Let's understand something. Israel faces some very serious threats here. And this is just one example. The only politician in Israel who's been telling the truth about this is Moshe Feiglin from the Zehut Party, whom J.T.F. supports. And we're going to be supporting him when the elections do come up. The elections should be next year. Unless the government falls before then, the elections will be late next year, and we're going to be supporting Moshe Feiglin and the Zehut Party. And the only movement and people who have been telling the truth, of course, are the heroic Jewish pioneers in Judea and Samaria, the Hilltop Youth. They're the only ones who tell the truth and spread the truth. Just think about this. Imagine in 1945, an American soldier liberating the Nazi death camps, as American soldiers did. The American soldiers and the Soviet soldiers liberated the death camps. And imagine an American soldier, he liberates the death camps and he sees all the dead Jewish bodies. And some of them are deteriorating, so it has terrible odor because they've been deteriorating, they've been wasting away there. And he sees the ovens, and he sees the makeshift ovens, little ovens for Jewish babies. When Jewish babies would arrive at the death camps, the SS soldiers would immediately grab the babies and throw them in these little ovens on the side, little makeshift ovens for the Jewish babies to immediately burn them alive. And he sees all of that, and he sees all the ashes, huge mountains of ashes of Jews that were burned alive, and huge bodies of Jews who were gassed to death, who were suffocated to death in gas chambers. And he sees the Jews who were victimized by Nazi experimentation. Parts of their bodies were cut off, organs were cut off, and they're walking around without their organ, without hands, without feet, without just only parts of human beings. And he sees they're so thin, their arms look like twigs. They're so thin. I mean, it's amazing how they survive, how they're still alive in any way. And the American soldier who liberates the death camps, he sees all of these terrible sights. The worst crime in human history was committed against the Jews during the Holocaust. And this American soldier sees all of that. And then when he sees the concentration camp survivors, the Jewish concentration camp survivors, they say to him, they ask him for food. They ask for food. That's what they asked for when the American soldiers arrived. And the American soldiers gave them food. And they died. The ones that ate the food from the American soldiers died because their bodies couldn't take a normal meal after being starved for so long. It killed them. He sees such a cruel and horrifying and nightmarish fate. And all the people in the Nazi concentration camps, all the Jews are like ghosts. The ones that did survive, the few that survived look like ghosts.
Yeah, their eyes were sunken in, and they should have been fed just clear broth until doctors gave the okay to start feeding them some solid food. But they didn't know. They were just soldiers. Most of them didn't even have a high school education. And so they see starving people. So their first thought is to help them and feed them.
And the first thought of the people who were starving was they wanted food. This is all they thought about during the time they were in the concentration camps. Anyway, so what a horror. Now, what if you told this American soldier, though, who sees this in 1945 after liberating the camps, he sees this and you tell him, you see these people, these ghosts here walking around? People who weigh, men who weigh only 100 pounds, 6 foot, men who are 6 feet tall and weigh 100 pounds. Can you imagine what that looks like? They see these sights and the soldiers, and you tell the soldier who sees all of this, you see these ghosts here? In 3 years, in 1948, this people here that you see, these ghosts, are going to return to the land of Israel and are going to recreate a Jewish state after 2,000 years, something that no people in history has ever done. Come back to their homeland after being expelled 20 centuries earlier and come back and liberate their homeland 2,000 years later. They're going to go back and liberate their homeland in Israel 2,000 years after 2,000 years. Do something which no nation, no people has ever done in history. You see these ghosts over here? These ghosts over here with the Jewish patches, with the Star of David patches on them. You see these ghosts? They're going to defeat enemies that outnumber them 100 to 1. They're going to win in the 1948 War of Independence with very few weapons against very well-armed Arab armies from the whole Arab world that'll come into to attack them. And the Arab armies will be commanded by British commanders like John Glubb, who commanded the Arab Legion. British commanders were commanding the Arab armies that came in to annihilate the Jews. And today,
most of the Jewish weapons were second-hand rifles from the American West of the 1880s, the old Winchester with the lever instead of the bolt. And they defeated the Arabs with these primitive weapons. They didn't even have one rifle for every soldier. It was maybe one in 10 had a rifle. They had to take it from dead Arabs.
And you see these ghosts over here, they're going to form communities like the communities that were on the border with Egypt. And they're going to be battles in which 200 men, women, and children are going to fight against 10,000 Egyptian soldiers. 250 Jewish men, women, and children will be fighting against 10,000 Egyptian soldiers in some of these battles and will defeat those 10,000 Egyptian soldiers. You see these ghosts? They're going to become, when they have uniforms on them, the uniforms that they're going to try, and even that, it was difficult for them to even make uniforms. They are going to become, man for man, the best fighters and the best military in the world, and will stun the world with their victory. Only 3 years from now, that's going to happen in 1948. 1945 was the end of the Holocaust. 1948, Israel comes into being again and defeats 7 invading Arab armies, outnumbered 100 to 1. 10 of ye shall chase 1,000 of them. 100 of ye shall put 10,000 of them to flight. That was what happened. And what would that American soldier tell you if you told him that 3 years from now these ghosts are going to do that? He would say, boy, you've got to be hospitalized. There's something wrong with you. You're mentally ill. You're insane. You're crazy. You got to be completely crazy. What are you, living in a complete fantasy world? What are you, crazy? That's what the American soldier would tell you. And any rational, logical person looking at it would agree with him, because what he's saying is rational and logical. But what happened with the Jews is not rational and logical, because God promised that certain things were going to happen, and they happened. And Trump is going against a people that has this destiny and this promise from God? Oh, is he playing with fire? He's a 78-year-old guy that God can take out of this world overnight. He's a 78-year-old guy, okay, in his last term in office, with a country, the United States of America, that has a lot of troubles, and he has very, very tough challenges ahead of him. And we'll see how well he's able to handle those challenges. He will succeed or he will fail based upon what he does with Israel. That will decide whether he succeeds or fails. That will decide whether he defeats inflation and brings down interest rates and restores the economy and seals the border and saves America demographically and turns around the whole situation. That'll be decided by what he does with Israel. If he goes against Israel, like he's done the past few days, if he continues down this path, America will not get out of all of these problems. And God will see to it that America will go deeper and deeper into problems, and America will go down. Israel won't go down. Even though Trump couldn't care less about Israel, Israel will survive, because Israel has a real ally. Not the United States, not any other country in the world, because the countries of the world are not allies of Israel. Israel has an ally. God is Israel's ally. And that ally is much stronger than Donald Trump and much stronger than Washington and much stronger than the European Union and the United Nations and the New World Order and the Arab League and the Muslim League and all other names, Russia and China and all other nations. God is stronger than all of them. And Trump doesn't believe that. But he may get a lesson like Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, got. He may get a lesson that he will very much regret having to learn, because it'll be the last lesson of his life, because he's already in his late 70s. This is his last term. If he fails now, this is it. And he will fail. Mark my words. He will fail and fail terribly, and America will be in terrible shape. Because if Trump fails, 4 years from now, the Americans will return the Democrats to the White House if Trump fails. That's what will happen. And if the Democrats come back, we again have open borders. We again have all the things that were happening that America will go down very fast. Very fast. That's what's at stake here. It's true that the things that Trump wants Israel to do endanger Israel's survival. But Israel will survive despite that. America is a different story. America doesn't have that promise. America can survive if America does the right thing. But if America doesn't, whoa, are they in trouble. There are people in America, there are leaders in America who are worthy of being president, who are worthy of the office, like David pointed out, like the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, he understands. He understands. They mock and ridicule him because he believes in the Bible. But he understands what the story, he knows what's going on. As the saying in Hebrew, he knows what time it is. That's a little saying that they have. You know, when you understand what's going on, you say, I know what time it is. That's one of these sayings. He knows what time it is. Hegseth. He understands. And every little old lady in rural Arkansas or in rural Kansas who believes in that Bible and who blesses Israel has more intelligence than Donald Trump. And then and Trump is not only surrounded by people like Hegseth. Hegseth is good. He's a good guy. And Mike Huckabee is a good guy. So Trump has some good people there. But he's also, and Noam, what was her name? Kristi Noam. She's good. She always...
Governor of South Dakota.
Yeah, in every interview she says, God's chosen people, we have to support them. This is what she says. They're God's chosen people. We have to support them. She is good. But he also has, because to take power, he'll deal with anybody. That's Donald Trump. He also has some very evil people around him, like Elon Musk, who wants to put microchips in people's heads, who is the richest man in the world and uses his money for many cases for terrible things, who likes and promotes statements by Nazis. He has Nazis on his platform, outright Nazis, who openly support Hitler and the Nazis, and he likes their comments. Or Nazis like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, two Nazis, who accuse Israel of genocide and accuse Israel of all these terrible things, and then Tucker Carlson invites on his show. He invites on his show someone who says the Holocaust never happened, it's all a lie. Those are also the people surrounding Donald Trump. And Joe Rogan, who on his show accuses Israel of genocide. Another Jew-hating Nazi pig. So he has some terrible people surrounding him also. He has a lot of evil people that are working with him too. And he has to make choices. He's going to have to make choices. He doesn't see things the way the Christians and the Bible-believing people that work for him see things, unfortunately. That's his problem, and that's America's problem. Where will America be the next 5 or 10 years? That'll be decided by what Trump does now with Israel. That's what's going to be decided. And America could be in a very bad spot. Very bad. There are a lot of threats to America right now. Tremendous threats. If America's overrun by third world people and demographically becomes majority third world and the economy collapses and all the debt that's building up and all the other problems, these are ticking time bombs. If they go off, America's doomed. I think is it $35 trillion, the national debt?
Yeah, it's 35.
$35 trillion. Okay, when it was $17 trillion, Trump said this is unmanageable. A country can't survive like this. He says if it goes to 19 trillion, that's the end of America. This is what Trump said. Now it's $35 trillion. You don't think someday that there's going to be a demand to pay off that debt, and there's going to be and that's government debt. The debt's personal debt is much higher than that, much higher. Corporate debt, much higher. Credit card debt of average Americans. 50% of average Americans are in debt to credit card companies. 50% of the American people are in debt to credit card companies. 50% of Americans, if they had
Many of them are maxed out on their cards, and they can't even buy anymore because the Democrats tell us how good the economy is. But if you're middle class and you're living through it, you know it's not.
50% of Americans, if they had to come up with $1,000 for an emergency, would have a hard time doing so. 50% could not come up with $1,000. That's how they live. They literally live paycheck to paycheck and live above and beyond paycheck because they're spending more than their paycheck gives them. That's why they're in over their heads. That's 50% of Americans. Do you know what can happen to an economy like that? How delicate that is? What if all of that collapses? What if all the cards, what if all the cards collapse? It could lead to chaos and panic in the markets and all types of problems. That chaos and panic is what was one of the things that led to the Great Depression in the 1930s. And America can't survive a Great Depression like America did in the 1930s, because in the 1930s, most people a lot of them were already poor. So they were already used to living in poverty. Today, Americans are spoiled. They have their cars. They have their houses in the suburbs. Majority of Americans have houses in the suburbs, have cars, have all types of little gadgets and things that they, all day long, with their little gadgets.
Satellite TV.
They have all of these things. I didn't mention TV because most Americans don't watch TV anymore. Most Americans are just on the internet now. They don't. The young generation doesn't watch TV anymore, or at least white American young whites do not watch television anymore. Young blacks do, though young whites do not. In any event, what will happen if all of that collapses? And if Americans lose their cars and their mortgages and their houses and all the little conveniences they have in life that they look forward to, if that happens, this will be like a world gone mad. They'll turn to anyone and anything in desperation. And that'll make for a very dangerous world here. J.T.F. is trying to bring this message to the people of Israel so that if the people of Israel would just say no to Trump's pressure and just say, I don't care you're pressuring, we're not going to do. We're going to do what we have to do to survive. You don't tell us what to do. Instead of wimps like Netanyahu, who always gives in to pressure, always caves in, always. If we didn't have people like Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich who pretend to be right-wing and all of them, and they're complete phonies. We didn't have them in Israel, okay? Just like you have the phony right in America. Trump is the phony right in America. I mean, I know that people say, well, how could you be against Trump? How can you be against Trump and Netanyahu? Because I'm one of these strange people. When you tell me you're going to build a bridge, you're going to build a wall, I want the wall. I know it's crazy. I know that everybody's going to say, oh, Chaim is so crazy. I want the real wall. Real wall, all across the border like you promised in the campaign in 2016. Build that wall. It was your number one campaign promise. And you didn't build anything. You built less than Obama and Biden. Now, I'm crazy. I'm crazy because I really expect that you're going to keep your word when you make these promises. But Trump supporters don't care about that. They don't. He promised he was going to reduce the deficit. He promised, a million things he promised to do. He promised he was going to seal the border. Now I hope at least he'll really do that. Whatever. The bottom line is, if we convince the people of Israel not to give in to that pressure, that'll be better for the whole world. That'll be better for the whole world. And when you help us, you can help us bring the truth to the people of Israel, to support the Jewish pioneers in Judea and Samaria and bring the truth to the people of Israel and wake the people of Israel up. How can anything be more important than that? That is the one thing that will bring redemption to the world, if the Jews and the people of Israel finally wake up. That will inspire also righteous Gentiles in other countries to do what should be done as well. But it has to come from the people of Israel waking up. That's the first step. And if we had the resources to reach the people of Israel, a lot of average Israelis, what you heard me say on this show, on this program here now, a lot of average Israelis think that makes a lot of sense, what I'm saying. If we could only bring the message to them, if we only had the money and the resources to bring the message to them, that's why we need your help. We urge you to leave in your will. Yes, when you make out your will, put J.T.F, the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F, in your will. Not going to hurt you to put it in your will, right? You won't be here. Believe me, where you're going, it'll be very helpful to you. It'll be very helpful to you if you put J.T.F in your will. You put Jewish Task Force, J.T.F in your will, with our address, with our post office box, 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York, 11365. Put us in your will. That's something you can do that will be very, very helpful. And you can help us right now. We need your help right now. How do you help right now? 2 ways you can do so. You can go to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org. The page is in Hebrew, but the donate button is in English. There's a big donate button on top in English. You just click on the donate button, and in a couple of minutes, you can easily and conveniently donate. And you're doing something very, very good for this world. If you don't want to do it online, you can do it through the regular mail by sending checks and money orders made out to J.T.F. And you send it to J.T.F. P.O. Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York, 11365. David?
I didn't know you were going to talk about this, but because I just read it this morning about Trump working on the deal between Israel and Hamas. But this war has caused such anti-Semitism, and because Jews are the only people in the world not allowed to defend themselves. So on Gateway Pundit, which has a huge audience, it's like Drudge used to be, a conservative, so-called conservative, Cassandra McDonald, is saying they want to take TikTok down because TikTok is criticizing Israel for genocide, and that the Israelis want TikTok down. Well, that turns out not to be even close to the truth. Our Congress has talked about taking TikTok down since 2019 because, contrary to the belief that she has that everybody's picking on Israel, it's actually Congress wants it down because there's a lot of information going around on what Congress is up to and what they really do, what they say they're going to do, and what they end up doing. And in most cases, other than enriching themselves, they do nothing. So the Congress wants TikTok down, but people have made livings off of TikTok. And if you take it down, they're going to sue for violating free speech rights. So we'll see where this goes. But
they're not going to win. They're not going to win the lawsuit. Not if it's upheld by if there's a law stopping it for national security reasons, they're not going to win. They're not going to win the lawsuit. By the way, who is the founder of Gateway?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I think the founder is gay, by the way. I think he's a homosexual, the founder. This is the conservative site. This is what
Yep.
we've come to. Now, okay, you may say, I'm just curious. I'm just throwing this out. Of course, I would never say anything politically incorrect. You know me. But do you think people would have accepted 20 years ago or 30 years ago a gay guy being the spokesman for conservatism? I'm just asking. I'm just wondering. I mean, this is where America. Just ask yourself if you think that this is good. Then fine. Okay, then fine. If you think it's good, I'm just curious. By the way, obviously, if there's someone who's gay and who thinks it's okay to be gay, obviously someone like that is not going to believe in the biblical, or I would think would not believe in the biblical requirement to support Israel. Because if he believed in the Bible, I don't think he would be involved in gay in being involved in being gay. I think. Just a point, just a little note to be that what conservatism has become in this country. Just a little side note. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, go ahead. But if you're gay and you have maybe too much estrogen or not enough testosterone, and your voice is a little high and your skeleton is very thin, well, you can't help that. You were born that way. But who you have sex with and who you keep company with and who you walk down the street holding hands with, that's a choice. You're given that choice. And so if you're going to do something that is out of the normal, do it at home and don't let anybody know you're doing it.
This is the founder of Gateway. This is the guy who established the site that now has so many. Drudge, by the way, is also gay. Drudge is gay also, Matt Drudge. From the Drudge, and Drudge, of course, now has become a leftist. He's a hardcore
Yes,
leftist
I was
now.
just going to say that.
Yeah, but once upon a time, he was the hero of the conservatives when he was against Bill Clinton. People in the 1990s, I know this is before some people's time, but in the 1990s when he was going against Bill Clinton, and he became big by being a conservative. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, if you go back 50 years,
I'm just mentioning this for people who, who may there may be some people out there who actually believe in the Bible and actually believe that you shouldn't do things that are sinful. I don't know. Are there people still out there that believe that? I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm just asking. That's all. I'm wondering.
if you go back 50 years and you were gay, you weren't called gay. You were called something else. And you hid the fact that you were gay because if somebody found out, they were liable to take a swing at you. And if you go back far enough, it was even illegal to be gay. And now I want to bring up our president in his farewell weeks. I can't believe they let him out. He embarrasses. What kind of wife does he have? Those last few weeks are when you want to take it easy and get ready for civilian retirement. Or in his case, well, he's got money, plenty of it. He can have a 24-hour nurse service in his house. But the average American is when they're going out, they get ready for retirement and they want things quiet. They don't want any aggravation that might cause a heart attack. But not the Biden family. They throw him in your face. Biden, just a few weeks ago, said the biggest threat to American democracy is white supremacy, not Islam. I'm adding that, not Islam. You would think Islam might be the biggest threat to America because they're here, they're all over, and you never know when they're going to get the call to do what Muslims do, kill the infidel.
By the way, he said 2 days ago that that he regrets dropping out of the race for president because he would have beaten Trump.
He said that a few times.
Yeah. So.
Well, he doesn't know where he is. It's not him talking. Well, it's his
That he
mouth is
said.
moving,
No,
but Obama's putting the words in.
That I believe is him. That I believe is him when he says he would have beaten Trump, because even his aides wouldn't. That they wouldn't say. It's too much. That they wouldn't say.
And then Joe Biden, one of the things he said about a week and a half ago is we still have to ban assault weapons because nobody defines what an assault weapon is. And if you look at it, when was the last time major murder was committed with an assault weapon? It's usually a handgun. It could be a pistol or it could be a semi-automatic. But when was the last time you remember seeing a mass murder with an AK-47 or an AR-15? It just doesn't happen. It's too bulky. You can't conceal it. So the murderers use pistols for the most part. And he still wants to ban assault weapons. We know what he means with assault weapons. He wants to ban the AR-15 and the AK-47.
By the way, if there are people who are stupid enough to think that, well, okay, that I could see you should ban. Why shouldn't you ban that? Why should anybody have that type of weapon? Because gangs have those weapons. And if you have a business and you want to protect your business or your family, you might need those weapons to protect yourself. In certainly, and by the way, the areas which have the strongest gun control are the areas that should have the freest laws on guns. They need guns more than anywhere else. I mean, all the places where you have the strictest firearms laws are the places with the highest crime. And it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And the crime is, look at crime where almost every house is armed, most with more than one gun. There's no crime here. Other than maybe a DUI one night.
These beasts, Los Angeles with the fires. And you have beasts who are going out and trying to set new fires. I mean, there are certain people who are just beasts. And many of them are armed. Why shouldn't people be armed? If someone sees somebody trying to set a fire that can kill large numbers of people and destroy tens of billions of dollars in property, why shouldn't someone be able to have a firearm in order to deal with that monster? I mean, this is just another example how crazy our society has become.
Right, where good is called evil and evil is called good. We're there.
That's the prophet Isaiah, by the way. Evil shall be called good, and that's all the prophet from the Bible.
And then, of course, Joe Biden is suffering the humiliation of being rejected by his own party, but it's actually a fitting end to Joe Biden's lifetime where he betrayed this country at every turn. Not alone. He wasn't the only one, but he was one of a big group who betrayed us and turned this country into a third world country. And what the media, especially our cities, what the media said, Donald Trump said about some kind of our cities are just exactly that. And he gives the Medal of Freedom to Hillary Clinton. What did she do to deserve it? The Wicked Witch of the West. For those of you that remember The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West, that's Hillary Clinton. And then one of the most evil men who ever lived, George Soros, gets the Medal of Freedom. That's a slap in the face to every hardworking American, to every American who did anything heroic. And then, if you think this country's nuts, in the UK, there were 2 killers, and they were each given 6 months for raping, these were Muslims, 2 killers for raping British girls and then killing them. So they were given 6 months because they have prison overcrowding, and 6 months for murder. And they gave them an additional 20 months because they wrote some things on the internet that they're not allowed to write. So that's a worse crime than killing British women. And the British people put up with this? Why do you tolerate it? You're so stuck into ancient tradition, you can't even see that those in power are hurting you. And that goes for just about every other Western country too. And one last thing that Joe Biden did, I don't know if anybody knows this. I just found out this past week. when he said he's building a highway in Africa is so that you could get around from country to country. It's like an interstate. And my first thought is he their president or is he our president? What about veterans who are living on the streets? What about elderly who are eating dog food because they can't afford anymore? They're living on small Social Security checks, and it's either pay the rent or eat, and they can't do both. So they pay the rent, and then they're stuck eating dog food. But he's got money to give to Ukraine, billions and tens of billions, and even hundreds of billions, and he's building a highway for Africa. How about our infrastructure? Potholes all over the place. On a show long ago, I told you the blacktop in London, because I was there many times, you don't see a pothole anywhere. And the blacktop is jet black year after year after year. It doesn't degrade. I don't know what they use, but don't you think we should be looking into that and use the same thing? Then we have the fires in California because Democrats destroy everything they touch. It could be from the smallest scale, which I told you, our table tennis club. They tried to destroy that, but we found a way out. Look at the cities they control. Look at the states they control. Look at California, one of the largest economies in the world. And California was a beautiful state with gold. It was called the Golden State. You get warm, dry weather in the south, and as you go further north, it gets cooler and wetter. You got the Pacific Ocean there. It was once paradise, but Pasadena lived in a beautiful town, Salinas. We're bringing third worlders in. Some of them don't even know what a toilet bowl is for, and it has to be explained to them. And some of them see it as money. They take it out and sell it, and they just use the hole in the floor. Meanwhile, California is burning because the snail darter and other fish and the trees, they don't want to touch the trees, so you don't thin them out, and the fire just spreads. With 100-mile-an-hour winds, it would spread no matter even if you did thin it out. But it would help. There'd be less burning. Meanwhile, they were supposed to build reservoirs. Reservoirs, according to one expert, should have been built in 1 year. You need so many permits, and everybody sues you to stop every course of action you take. They built one reservoir. It took 5 years. One of the covers is broken because you want to keep the water clean. It's over a year now after they approved everything, and nothing has been done. It's not like it started and they're working very slowly. Nothing has been done. And that's what California is. It's a one-party state. The Democrats run it from top to bottom. And of course, the people there, they keep electing the same people. Hopefully this time, you'll finally get rid of your governor and the mayor of Los Angeles. I believe, you can't tell with Californians, I believe their political careers are over. They just don't know it yet. But you know what you'll do? You'll throw them out and put people in who are even worse, because that's how California thinks. To think that Ronald Reagan was once the governor of this state. Look how far it's fallen. If a state that rich can fall, just imagine how fast and how far poorer states can fall. Oregon sent 1660 fire engines to help put out the fire. They were held up in Sacramento because they had to do smog checks on them. Do you think smog matters when your whole state is burning down? This is idiocy. As Archie Bunker said many years ago in the All in Family TV show, and he said to Mike and Gloria when they're thinking of moving to California, he said it's the land of fruits and nuts. It hasn't changed a bit. It's gotten worse. It has changed. It's gotten far worse since then. Then California has spent $11 billion on a high-speed rail system. It looks like a monorail type train. So far, after spending $11 billion, they've only completed 1,600 feet. That's about a quarter of a mile. And I just want to close. Oh no, I got one more thing. Different subject. About all these people with all the genders and their pronouns, his and her, and it and whatever else. Isn't it interesting that when they do an archaeological dig and they find skeletons, they're either all male or female, not one of the other 38 genders. Why is that? Why do we only have those genders now? Why is even prehistoric, you can go back to cavemen, they're all male or female. There's nothing in between. And then I want to close with, this is a good one. Catherine Frank, or Frankie, Franke, professor at Columbia University, resigns. She's Jewish. Following a probe that stated she discriminated against Israeli students. So there's your self-hating Jew, and once again, more discrimination because of Israel trying to defend themselves. The only nation in the world that's not allowed to. I am.
So very true. In your heart, you know we're right. And in your guts, you know they're nuts. For J.T.F. until next week, and for David Ben Moshe, Shalom.